the exploration of dark Nordic and Celtic myths and sagas, a vastly unexplored, unexploited board game thematic realm that we have not really seen. And so when CMON announced that they were going to be doing a game set in the Trudvang world, that sounded freaking awesome. Trudvang Legends, right? Let me tell you right now, mixed bag. No pun intended, but pun definitely intended. Let's talk about why this game is both better than it should be, but also has some big flaws. Let me tell you why, what, and help you make a decision on whether or not this is right for you. Let's do this. Trudvang Legends has been a significant roller coaster ride for anyone that's followed it since it went to crowdfunding with CMON. This was the first campaign that CMON said, "Oh crap, guys, we're actually losing money. Maybe we should pretend not to have fake stretch goals and do unlocks." And that has been a game changer going forward, not just with them, but the ripple down with other big companies getting away from just the truly stretch and more just unreveal unlocks. But that's not by far the biggest news that came out of that campaign, because after the campaign, the even bigger news came out. Months after the campaign ended. Months after they said, here's the game that we got. Here's the game that we're going to bring you, right? They said, hey guys. Hey guys. The words that every person in a relationship never wants to hear. The 4 words, right? We need to talk, right? Shivers. Chills down your spine. Essentially, that was the update that they sent out. And it said, hey guys, we've been trying to do this game, and yeah, it's not you, it's us. In the sense that not a relationship, but a, hey, we're trying to do this game and it's just not working at all, so we're just going to start from ground zero. We're just going to nuke the thing and build it from the ground up. And we'll let you know where things are at in a few months, right? Okay, see you later. Great, thanks. Peace out. And whew, boy howdy, that was met with some mixed reception. Just like the campaign, mixed reception. Again, the thematic overarching premises of this is absolutely tremendous. This is one of my, dare say, dark horse underutilized themes that I would love to see more people utilize to a greater extent. I mean, it's based off a role-playing game of relatively decent renown. And it takes sort of the dungeon crawl aspect of things, mixes it with a swirl of narrative campaign open world, as well as a sprinkling, more than a sprinkling, I dare say, a good pinch of bag building, and gives you an interesting result. The basic gist of this game is you are going to be exploring this open world board with your adventurers, your heroes, the protagonists of the story. And you're going to be just sort of venturing along the way, picking up quests, exploring adventures, fighting bad guys, fighting good guys that you found out were later bad guys. And it's doing it through a branching story that we have ever seen now to be the popular chic thing, right? Everybody's got to have their story. Everybody's got to have their narrative. Everybody's got to have their, choose your own adventure, essentially. And that's what this is for CMON. This is their exploration, their foray into the choose your own adventure vibe. And in theory, this should work. In theory, the individual parts of this game are really quite clever. I give them a lot of kudos, as much as, the beginning portion of this is me being a cynic. At the same time, it takes a bit of chutzpah to say, hey guys, we're basically scrapping the whole thing and we're going to start over from ground zero. Like, my biggest premise and policy on crowdfunding especially is a crappy game is a crappy game forever, right? A delayed game, 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it may be, that turns out to be better is still a better game. And so when people say there's going to be delays, like, I'm more concerned about the end game product that you're bringing me rather than how long it takes to get to me. I am not one of those people that cares the actual date of projection and the date that I get it delivered. I do not care. But I was so interested in this, I broke one of my cardinal rules of crowdfunding, right? I broke the cardinal crowdfunding rule of not paying for split shipping. And I paid for split shipping. And the great thing is, I can talk to you about the game now. The poor thing is, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the rest of my all-in. And let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about why I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. Let's go into things. Let's give you some detail. Let's give you some examples. Let's give you some concrete, because if you're one of those people that's looking at this from the outside going, hey, how is this? What are you looking at? What should I know, Chris? Let's get into the nitty gritty now that we've passed the preamble, right? The core prime rib of this video. And when we talk about the core, we would be amiss if we didn't mention that this is the book of sagas. This is hefty. This is 20, I don't want to say campaigns, but 20 scenarios-ish. Some of them are more than just like a simple scenario, right? Because as you're going to be flipping through this book, it's C19-039. You manage to blah, 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 blah. The party gains quest token 3 to represent the blah, blah, blah. And I'm not telling you because of spoilers, right? If you've played the other adventure and don't have quest token 4, go to entry 4. If you have both of those, go to adventure 16. If you have only one of them, go to, adventure 60. If you don't have any of those, go to adventure 3. So, you're doing a lot of that. You're doing a lot of flipping through here, getting a lot of this, and it's non-sequential. And the nice thing about this is that it's relatively self-contained. And if you go through one of these, you're not going to hit every single piece of the narrative, right? Like, if you have some of those elements, some are going to be within the individual scenarios to unlock portions of that scenario. Some are going to be actually from other scenarios that are going to be interwoven, especially along the main quest line. So that's really nice. The board that goes along with this is also, it's okay. I have mixed feelings about this board, because essentially what it tells you to do is it'll tell you to A through L unlock one of these pieces, Okay, start with this B and you just pop it out, right? And it says Misty Forest, Dark Woods, interact to read entry C2013, because the thing that you don't see with this is all of those 20 scenarios have individual sheets, and they're going to be slotted into here when you're doing that individual scenario. And so you get to interact. That's how you flow through beyond just what is in that book. And some of them will stay revealed. Some of them will get covered back up depending on your progression or where you're at in the mission. Kind of a nifty little side treat there. The main crux of it, though, the main course, and this is the cool thing, and I'm pulling it straight out of the box so you can see. You won't be able to tell spoilers here, but this is a really, really cool thing, right? This is the main course right here, right? You can see that almost all of these are filled in by various cards, various quests, various rules, actually, and this is the cool thing here. You have these phases that are going to be present, but also potentially not present in the game. So it changes the flow of the game as you explore. As you get more experience, it's going to add things, and that's kind of cool. It's adding things as you go along. And that is a very nice mechanic, because how many times have we jumped into a game and said, oh, geez, you know what? This is layer upon layer upon layer. Now we're seeing games going, hey, I'm going to slowly teach you how to play step by step, not losing things, but adding complexity. So by the time you get this filled in, you're comfortable with it all. You're not confused by it. You're not going, well, when do I do this phase and how does this phase interact, or what does this phase look like? No, because it's been because it's been gradually added in sort of a, not necessarily linear, but a very comprehensible method. And these are also the main crux of things, because these are the supposed quest board, essentially, if you want to think of it like that, where you're going, unlocking things, slotting them into a slot, and then potentially being able to say, okay, I'm going to go now do this quest. It tells me C3, open page C3, put C3 into this thing that we just talked about, and then do your thing. And there are going to be these that are filling up. There are going to be these, in theory, that are going to be falling off, and just availability across the board that's going to sort of be dynamically changing. You'll also have allies and other people that will be along the way on this that will be of significant, well, effect, we'll say, depending on who they are, what they are, or even just what is available town-wise. Because you start out with some of these just being towns, and some of the towns will be replaced, which will change the actions that you can do at said town in the first place. And the map is just, I mean, I'm not even sure if I can show it to you here. I'll probably just blow up a picture of it over me talking, because it highlights a similar aspect of what you're going to be dealing with, right? You've got the similar setup here in terms of the slots. And you've got a lot going on as well from that aspect of things. The cities that I mentioned, the overlaps, you take some out sometimes and you replace what they do, and they tell you how you're going to be interacting. The main way is that you're going to be using those cities to upgrade your bag building, which we'll get into in a second as the core mechanic of this game, which is one of my favorite mechanics. Like, I'm starting to think I almost like bag building more than deck building at times, because it's just kind of cool and it adds an additional different layer of randomness than what you usually see. And it's pretty expansive. I mean, this is a big freaking board, as you can see, right? This is not small, it takes up a lot of space, and if you can even hold it properly, yeah, it's everything that you need to know from that aspect. So it takes that element twice and uses it. You can even see that I have something on here called, spoilers alert, right here, 3, 2, 1, dim gates, which are additional things that you're going to have to deal with that are going to pop up in locations that are going to slowly be available to you, because a lot of these places aren't even going to have stuff as you play, and they may pop up, they may get rid of, they may just depend on what scenario is active, which part is available from that aspect. So now that we've covered that aspect of things, right, let's talk about the bag building. Let's talk about what this entails as you pick one of your various protagonists to deck build, but also to ability build. Because the two go hand in hand. We can't talk about one without talking about the other. Every character has a starting set of these abilities, everywhere from the basics to the legendaries to the ultimates. We'll talk about that in a second too, because that's... Anyway, the difference in this game from your traditional dungeon crawls, if you will, where I slaughter guys, I get experience, I get stronger, right? That typical progression trope that everyone's familiar with. This takes a little bit different spin of it. You battle, and the number of battles you win give you experience, and they give you experience. And so you need to have a certain number of experience to cycle out one of these cards and get the corresponding upgrade from maybe mocking song number 1 to mocking song number 2. And so it goes through all of these: strike 1, strike 2, brave ballad 1, 2, battle chant 1, 2, sweet melody. And so you have those aspects that you're upgrading, because you only have a set amount of these at all times. It's not just adding. And that's the slight nuance that I'm both pleased by, but also mixed on, if you will. It upgrades them, so you're not stuck with lesser abilities, which is great. But you also only draw 4 of these abilities at the beginning of every combat. And so you basically have 2 different sets, and then when you go through 2 different combats, then you shuffle them up to give yourself a new potential combination of these 4, which is both very clever and very frustrating at the same time, because as you can see, many of the characters have certain symbols on their abilities, more so than other symbols. And so they're going to be specializing, emphasizing in those certain runes, because that's what these are. These are considered runes. And these are the things that you're going to be drawing from the bag. Because what you're doing is when you draw them on the bag, you're pushing your luck. And if you draw ones that are matching these, you lay them on there. When they're filled, you can utilize the abilities. If they can't be placed, or you draw the ubiquitous, terrifyingly ever-present token rune that is basically a miss, the equivalent of a miss token, you put it on your character board. And when the character board gets too many of those, well, detrimental effects happen from a thematic standpoint. And so you can rinse and repeat and use these as many times as you want, as you fill them up and use them, and you have potential to, cancel enemies' abilities, heal, attack, or give yourself boons or remove curses, essentially, condition-changing elements as well. And so therein lies the different protagonists' abilities, emphasis, strengths, your fighter, your wizard, your trap guy, your bard, who I'm using right now, who I played through to give it more of a support character element, which is nice. They also have individual starting items that are going to be available to you, as well as the character card, which basically just tells you what your starting deck is, if you will, your starting bag of runes, and which ones are going to be the most important and how you can sort of predict the odds. And that goes into the city element that I mentioned before on the map, where you're going to these cities and potentially being able to pick up some of the runes that are more on your feats, so you have a higher percent chance of drawing those. That's where the battle comes in, right? Is that you're drawing these runes several at a time, laying them down, and either utilizing them or adding them to the miss pile. And that dynamic of back and forth is how you battle. And the enemies hit you. And so you have to be able to block them. If you can't, you take damage. This is the most controversial aspect of the game, I'll tell you right now. This is the part that's going to turn off a lot of people. When you're fighting in these battles, I mean, it's nice because you feel cool when you can combo these and that you can add them and you get that sweet combination of 4 feats together that just makes perfect synergy. Because as much as you could get frustrated by that, there's also a good element too, but it also requires team balance. If you have support characters, if you just draw the ones at the wrong time, yeah, there are some battles that are just not going to go well because you're going to pull stuff, you're going to run into issues, and you're going to get beaten. And that's not the biggest deal, right? Losing is not an issue. The issue, to go back to that now, is that death, right? Death has no effect, essentially. There is no real significant penalty whatsoever for dying. If you die, you just kind of come back slightly modified and you continue on fighting, which makes the consequences of said battles sort of moot at times. It sort of lends itself then to be more robotic and less intuitive and meaningful if the consequences are less than important. If there's no penalty for losing, it doesn't make winning nearly as sweet, right? Winning is nice, but winning against something that you overcame the odds against, or that you weren't supposed to win, or that you swooped down at the last minute. I mean, Star Wars A New Hope, right? If Luke had just gone in there in the X-Wing and Darth Vader, oh, I can't catch him! Proton torpedoes away! Pew, 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 pew. Right? It would not be nearly as exciting, tension building, rewarding as when, Wedge gets shot out and can't stay in and support him anymore. And then all of a sudden Vader notices that he's sensitive to the Force. And then Vader's like, haha, sucker, too bad. Target lock, see you later. And then Han comes in, come on, kid, let's blow this thing and go home. The excitement that comes from overcoming is part of movies. it's part of media, it's part of board games. And when you essentially almost eliminate the penalty for having or not having that, it sort of takes some steam out of things. It sort of makes me feel like I'm just going to start going through the processes, like that I can just start skipping through the narrative and just kind of going through and seeing what happens and seeing the consequences. And okay, well, I'm going to win this battle because it doesn't matter how many times I die. I'm just going to automatically make it through. So I'll just take my experience right now, and then I'll just go on to the next phase of things and the next battle, and I'll just adjust this slightly. And then these guys are going to come here, and then we'll do this, and I'll just skip through. And it becomes all sort of trite. It loses the consequential nature of it, and that is the biggest detriment of this game by far. The question you have to ask yourself in that sense then, are the positives going to outweigh that? Are these cool rune feats that you're going through and upgrading worth it? Is it cool getting some of these legendary ones as you upgrade? Is it cool finally unlocking one of the ultimate skills that your character has? By the way, ultimate skills, which are literally, this is a huge pet peeve of mine, literally not mentioned a single time in the freaking rule book. Like, you open up and it's like, okay, go through your feats in the deck, and it's like you end up with this ultimate card, and you're going, how do I play this? Well, you have to find it out later through the story, but you have to get like significantly through the story to even figure out, did they just forget to talk about this? Or why did they give me this if I can't? Like, that's super weird as well. Super frustrating. If you just exclude an element of the game from discussion at all. It's not like this is hiding in a secret mystery envelope and it's like, hey, don't open this envelope until you get to scenario X with part Y. No. It's, okay, here's your character cards, go through there, sort them out, and set them aside, but we don't actually talk about this, so just ignore it? Right? Okay, that makes sense, right, okay, sure. The character board, I mean, the artwork on this is absolutely fantastic. That's what really makes Trudvang. The player boards, I mean, it's relatively intuitive. You've got your health, you've got your cards over here, your cards over here, and your cards down here. It's all going to be mitigating. This is your miss area, where if you miss, nothing happens here. This is the neutral area. And then if you miss and get all the way over here, you take a negative detriment. And as you gather positive and negative detriments, these are the ones that will always stay in place, but then they're going to shift other ones. And as you collect more of them, it's going to potentially push out some negatives or push out some positives, which is, again, kind of a neat mechanic, but it's lost in the shuffle of the meaninglessness of dying in the combat situations, because that's where these affect things, right? And so the dynamic, the utilization of this cool mechanic is kind of lost, suffered, wasted even. So that's the problem with it. You get items, you get upgrades, you get all these little trinkets that you can pick up that are going to give you additional things. The item decks that you're going to be acquiring that will sort of be utilized in a combat round, where you collect them, you put them in a stack, and as you use them, then you just put it on the bottom and the next card comes up being able to be used, which again is a slightly different way. It's not, okay, you can only hold Diablo-esque this many items, and once you reach that many, you just have to discard them and throw them aside and no one can. No, I mean, you put one under when you use it, but until you use it, so if it's not one that you want to use, you may just use it at some point that isn't quite super beneficial, so you can get to the ones that are better. Which, again, is kind of a weird incentive. Like, hey, use this item that you don't really want to use so you can get to the good one. Right? Does that make sense to you guys? It doesn't always make sense to me. But, you know, say what you want. Production, you know, there's a reason I don't talk about production in a lot of these big games. The production's great. I mean, the production's solid. I have no issues with the production. The miniatures are top notch. They're not called CMON for nothing. And so that's not ever really my concern. Also, I am more concerned about not how pretty the plastic and the superfluous elements are. I'm concerned about how the gameplay flow goes. And those elements at the beginning work very well. It's just the combat becomes inconsequential comparatively because of those same issues that I mentioned. And that ultimately leaves me feeling a bit frankly speaking, unsatisfied. You know what the forums right now are full of? The forums are full of people going, I'm going to house rule this. What do you think about the ultimate abilities of this? What do you think about house ruling death like this? What do you think about house ruling at that? Like, that's not what I want to see the predominant discussion on a game like this, right? Like strategy, like builds, unlocking secret things. That's what I want. Not, hey guys, how can we change the game? Because it just left us all feeling rather unsatisfied from this large major element of a significant mechanic that the game is based upon, right? And that's frustrating. Because again, I want to like this game. They're doing some really unique things that I'm not seeing elsewhere. This isn't, as the concern was when they scrapped things over, a rinse repeat of other things that are out there. No, they're doing some different things, and I love innovation. But you have to make it a complete game. And that's what it doesn't feel like right now. This feels like a narrative campaign with cool mechanisms, with the consequences of combat sort of tossed aside, despite spending a lot of time making cool mechanisms and ultimately making them kind of lackluster at the same time, as cool as they are, because if they don't mean anything in the end, well, the means don't justify the ends. And so that's my problem with this game as a nutshell right now. The other thing that I have to mention in this scenario-based campaign game, you talk always about with these games, right? Like, how is the upkeep? How is the save? How is the getting it back out once you've stopped playing? And the problem I have with this game right now is it penalizes you for stopping playing, essentially. It says, you know what, when you save, all those chits you required that were sort of, made your bag a lot better, that you added like a ton in here now, so you have like a ton of these that you're just, oh wow, these are great, and these all match my stuff even better. I got a couple of these wild ones that, are awesome. So it outnumbers the little bull ones that are the misses automatically. Yeah, just kind of reset your bag once you're done. And so when you start over next time, get rid of a lot of the stuff that made your character upgraded and unique and cool, and the progress that was really evident by that. Yeah, just kind of reset it and start over. But keep the stuff on the main boards with the cards there, because you'll still need to know where you're going from that aspect. But don't worry about this stuff or, some of this stuff. Just, get rid of it, and we'll start over, and we'll tell you what to start with each time based on that, right? Does that sound satisfying? Again, like, part of these games is the progression, not the progression of just the story, because that's really where it seems like the main emphasis is the progression of the story. I want the progression of the character. I want the progression of the abilities. I want, as a role-playing game, right? Like, you want to see your character get stronger when they go from level 1 to level 5 to level 10, whatever it may be, whatever system you prefer from that aspect of things. And that's what this represents. And so when you get rid of some of this, I keep tossing it down after every time because why not? It loses the meaning again behind going through it to get there. And again, that leaves you rather unsatisfied when you're having to start over. I mean, it makes it easy for someone jumping in, but it sort of hurts the people who are playing for the whole time. So, like, if you do what I did and you play through for like 3 or 4 hours at a time, you really see some progression, you really see some improvement, you really see some dynamics that you can do. But then you put it away and you lose that. And you should not be penalized for not being able to play huge chunks of time for a game or leaving it out ad nauseum. That should not be something gamers should worry about. That's a big turnoff, period. A few other elements that you need to know about, because we've sort of glanced by them, been adjacent to them, but not fully addressed. I talked about the combat, the enemies not really just basically hitting you. We're talking about the enemy's attack deck, essentially. You're drawing one of these off the top, and all enemies, get this bonus or detriment to their attack that round to determine how much damage their attack is going to do to you. That's a flavorful mechanic, but again, you're pulling cards randomly, and you don't really shuffle until you're out. So it allows you to experience a majority of them without having to worry like, okay, the deck is going to be too random and you're only going to pull the bad ones, right? The other aspect of things that I've touched on but have not really mentioned is the event phase of things, where basically if you think of Dead of Winter, you just pull up one of these events off the top and each hero in the party performs a charisma test. So essentially you pull a certain number of chips out of your bag, and if you pull a certain number of these charisma tokens, well, great. If you do, you succeed and you get the succeed bonus. If you fail, then you have a detriment, and you draw every one of these that you can. And the problem with this is, it's not that they're bad, but you can see that this deck is not like the event deck of Dead of Winter. Like, Dead of Winter made it a priority to make that deck like this big, so you can play Dead of Winter like 4 or 5 times and not see every single one. If you play this game for like an hour or two, you're going to see every single one of these, which some of them are just slightly clever. Some of them are just slightly annoying in terms of you just get a bad pull and something bad happens. Or you need to have every hero succeed, or at least one hero succeed, or choose one hero, or move enemies all towards you. Each hero discards a bad detriment and also loses a health. I mean, things like that they're okay, but there could be so much more variation with this. Again, it just seems like since you had so many mechanistic features in this game, it was overlooked. Wasn't given the attention, the proper showcasing that it could have been. You have so much dynamic in the other decks of cards, of these event cards, these location, these story cards, if you will. I mean, this stack is huge. This is where all the effort went. But the problem is, this is only part of it. The events that are going to influence things are just as important potentially as round by round mitigators. And it just seems a little bit overlooked. They're nice. They add more flavorsome chaos to the game. Some people are going to like that. Some people are going to hate that as well, though, too. Like I said, just detrimental stuff if you just badly pull out of your bag. Because it's not like combat where you can sort of, okay, get a few misses and have it happen. This is okay, pull 7 tokens, and if you pull the right ones, oh, great, you succeed. Or you just pulled the wrong ones. Sorry. Too bad. Take a detriment. That's going to change how you do. But again, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? At the same time, because if you have some of those detriments, combat is not really penalty wise. So, I guess it doesn't matter as much then, right? So ultimately, how do I feel about things? Final thoughts. It's a quality narrative. It's a qualitative narrative. It's a quality scenario-based situations. You've got a few twists. You've got a few turns. You've got a few dynamics in there, that hit some tropes, that stay away from some tropes, that do some twists on what you may be thinking in terms of who the good guys and who the bad guys are. At the same time, sometimes when you're going through this narrative, there's absolutely no clue on what to do. You're just randomly guessing. Hey, do you want to go this way or this way? Hey, make a random choice. Sometimes the random choice that you make based on your intuition of what's been told to you is going to be right. And sometimes we just led you down red herrings and haha, too bad. Surprised you for the sake of surprising you. Again, that's not very satisfying either. Like, twists are okay, but like you need to be cool about it. Like, not M. Night Shyamalan doing his thing for the sake of doing it, but making it meaningful at the end as well. And that's lost sometimes with the narrative side of things as well. I have mixed feelings about this game. I kind of had fun. I kind of enjoyed those elements that I said, especially with the bag building and especially with okay, I'm going to upgrade my character and upgrade the skills and, mix and match those and, making myself utilize the runes that I draw to the best extent. Like, that's clever. That's nice. It's rewarding. But the lack of consequences, the randomness for the sake of seemingly randomness in some of these events or decisions or decision trees that's present within the scenarios is just as equally frustrating, and it sort of balances itself out. And I guess this is one of those things where I don't really know what I'm going to do with this game. I don't really know what I'm going to do when I get the rest of Wave 2 of all of the other content. Like, is it going to be just more of the same? Because if it's more of the same, I'll probably try and sell it. If it actually does more, if they take some of the feedback, if they take some of the concerns and they utilize it and make it 2.0 between now and then, and that's a big ask. And I don't think it's going to happen, but I hope that it is as well, to give this the chance that it could be of being one of the better CMON games as a whole. One of the better open world campaign scenario games as a whole. But right now, as it stands, it's more in line with the RPG at the beginning that I mentioned that this is based on, rather than a tabletop dungeon crawl board game that you're more familiar with in terms of consequences, mechanisms, and where it leaves you at the end. So that's the trouble with it at the same time. I mean, I enjoyed playing it, but it got a little monotonous. It got a little bit robotic in terms of going through the motions with some of the battles and some of the drawing and some of the interactions. And ultimately, I'm not sure, unless things are changed, especially with the extra stuff coming later, that my feeling on that is necessarily going to change. I want it to change, but I'm not sure that it will. And that's not where I prefer to be with a game like this, regardless of how much money I spend or not. So there you go. Trudvang Legends, the core box, not too much spoilers, a little bit of thoughts all over the place. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. As always, I love doing this. I love talking about board games. I have a Patreon if you want to, do that thing too. Help me help you. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. See you around. Do the YouTube thing. Click, 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 and I'm done. That's all I got. Woo! Teach you how to play boom by boom step.